just wanted to ask you about your recordings.
Okay, sure.
You're very well known for your layering of sounds, and that's amazing. How do you do it? Do you do it at home, all these recordings?
Yeah, well, I think years ago, you know, when everybody started figuring out how to work Logic and Pro Tools, I was fast to get in and just start pushing buttons and try to figure out the program best I could. And I got, you know, fairly good at it. And with the internet, with being able to like send files to anybody around the planet, you know, I realized you didn't have to be in the studio or be in New York to send a track to New York.
Oh shit! You know, sorry.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Great welcome.
So I just started at my house. I bought some nice microphones and some nice preamps, and I have great guitar amplifiers and great guitars, and that's where it kind of started. And I started putting tracks down. So I got into it just by, you know, just because everyone else was, and because it was kind of what you had to do. You know, nowadays I do most of my recording at my house and send it to the internet for people, and they pay me by PayPal or some other way, you know. Mm-hmm. So doing that, that's when I first started doing it. And then about 7 years ago, I started doing my own recordings, my own records. And in the demo, we was creating the songs on the onset. You know, when you come up with an idea and you put it down. I didn't always want to hire a keyboard player to come play, because I can't really play keyboards. I mean, I understand theory enough to go to a piano and play any chord, but I really don't. I've never been fast enough to learn how to play piano. I can't really switch. So instead of hiring somebody to play a pad here or there or experiment, which is what I always do when I write anyway, I just figured out how to get by layering guitar effects with slide, and delay, reverb, and some effects. You can get some great sounding layers behind. And what first became just trying to fill up for an ambiance, for a mood, you know, I would end up like liking the parts, and then I couldn't hear the song without this one part in the background, so they ended up staying on the CDs. And it, you know, at first it just kind of was because it was necessary just to get the effect out, and I couldn't afford a keyboard player. I didn't want to take the time to. I'm very impatient. I like to get things done now. You know,
because you have an idea and you want to.
If I have an idea, I just kind of want to do it then. I don't want to wait till tomorrow. If I want to. It's the same way with anything in my life. If I want to get something done, I'll just jump on it. If I move into a new apartment, I want to get it set up that day. I don't want to wait for somebody to come in and do it. So that's kind of how it started, and then I kind of got better and better at it. And you know, playing slide guitar helps out a lot too. Because slide guitar can be very ambient. I'm thinking of Daniel Lanois, Ry Cooder, a lot of the guys who, Chris Whitley, who's I was a big fan of. You know, Lowell George, Little Feat, all those kind of bands. The slide guitar, even if it's not being used for a solo, can be a great sound to have as a pad in the background, floating around with a little reverb on it. It's a great sound.
You talked earlier about the effect, the steel guitar effect you had with the special guitar.
Well, I have one of my favorite instruments in the world is pedal steel. That's, I think, the most beautiful, and it's one of the hardest instruments in the world to play, because it's got it can have like 10 or 12 pedals, there's 10 or 12 strings, there are weird intervals, they have levers that hang down between your legs and up above your leg, and it's like flying a helicopter to play that thing. It's just like, how do you learn? And I tried at one point to try to learn that for a few months, but it was so over my head. I mean, I realized then it was going to be a life mission to learn how to play this instrument. So then I realized that I saw actually Sheryl Crow play one time, and her guitar player was using, excuse me, yeah. So, I remember I saw Sheryl Crow one time in concert, and I remember going, who's playing pedal steel? I love pedal steel. And there's no pedal steel on stage. I realized the guitar player had this contraption, which I finally traced down and found out what it was. It's called the palm pedal. It's palm and pedal for like pedal steel. It emulates or simulates the pedal steel. But it's much simpler. It just fits on a standard guitar. And when you press one of the levers down, it raises one note, just a whole step, or whatever you set the interval, but traditionally a whole step. So you can get like sounds like.
Oh, that's cool.
Kind of pedal steely things. This is like. Anyway, so I got very good at that, at using that with a volume pedal, so I can make like pedal steel sounds in the back of my tracks, and people always think I have a pedal steel or something. So that's another piece of a landscape, kind of a soundscape that can make for nice moody stuff. I recently did a soundtrack for a little independent movie in Los Angeles, and I used a lot of ambient effects like that: the palm pedals, slide guitars, dobros with reverb, reversing the tracks. And these are not really for specific melodies, but more for like an ambiance, like a soundscape that you just kind of hear in the back.
Paris, Texas.
Exactly, that kind of stuff. Or even more, I mean, one album that I really liked, one CD that I really liked in the last several years was one by Paul Simon called Surprise, and Brian Eno produced that. And I just love the fact that you can listen to that record and you hear, what is that sound? And you don't know what it is.
Mm.
So I like having that mystery of that template of kind of, where it's more of a feeling and more of kind of an emotion that you kind of get through the music without really having to play a melody or without having to have a chord structure. It's just kind of a soundscape that can be very moody and very effective.
Ah. Okay, so you don't do a lot of reamping?
No.
No.
You mean, when you mean reamping, you mean
like recording a dry guitar signal and then trying out various different amps?
I'm not that involved. I just kind of, I have everything's at my house. Everything's kind of set up permanently, and I just kind of I make do with what I have set up at the time. I have 10 or 20 different amplifiers, but I have kind of my favorite ones I have set up that are already pre-mic'd. So if I get an idea, I can just kind of go to it and do it. And then if I manipulate the sound, it's usually before with my pedal board. Yeah, I usually don't do much tinkering with the reamplification or stuff afterwards. Maybe adding a little reverb or delay maybe after the fact. I record dry, of course.
Okay, I saw a video by Pete Thorne, Pete Thorne?
Yeah, sure.
And he got a very nice recording room with a lot of different amps also.
Right, and he has much more experience than I do doing movies and that kind of stuff. Up to this point in my career, I've been more of a live player, and I've mostly toured with other people, which is what I'm trying to kind of break out of now. I'm living in Los Angeles. I've been writing last year and a half, writing a lot of music for television and doing like kind of like what he does as well, the same kind of soundscapey, atmospheric type of stuff.
Okay. That's an important issue as well. Doing various things for movies, TV, just to make a living playing guitar.
Of course, yeah. Well, things have changed for a lot of players my age and people in their 50s. When I first went to Los Angeles back in the 80s, I graduated from music school and started teaching there immediately. But I also started touring with a lot of different bands, and Gino Vanelli and Roberta Flack and Randy Crawford and a lot of Bobby Caldwell, a lot of great singer-songwriters. And I kind of got stuck, kind of pigeonholed as that guitar player. And of course, as you get older, those people are getting older, they tour less. Mm-hmm. And the new bands are more, they're not really looking for that LA rhythm section as much anymore. It's more of self-contained bands. So you get older, and the older you get, the less you really want to travel and do other people's music too. Mm-hmm. I got to a point about 10 years ago where I was just really tired of playing other people's music, and I was not getting any satisfaction out of it. The thrill of being on stage, playing a solo for somebody else, doing what they wanted me to do was not very thrilling anymore. Okay. So my taste and my direction have definitely changed in the last 10 years. Okay.
And when you're recording, you just mentioned that you like to do things at the spur of the moment, and you want to. Sometimes when I listen to your songs, your themes, they sound improvised sometimes. And when you play live, you also seem to like you're improvising that theme at that moment.
Well, the melodies are all born out of improvisation. I mean, if I have an idea for a song, it's usually sometimes more of a mood than it is an actual melody. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I'll just kind of hear a sound and I'll find the right drum groove maybe, or I might find the right chord. And then from that point on, it is improvisation, and I improvise. And sometimes I'll play 3 or 4 tracks and listen back, and I'll choose which one is the best for the melody of the song. That's true. A lot of it, I think, is born out of improvisation, or what my ear naturally does. I follow my instincts best I can.
Okay. And then you cut and paste the best parts, or and then re-record?
I hate to cut and paste. I like to just have a good take. Mm-hmm. But if I find, sometimes if I find the right direction for a melody, it might be 1 or 2 notes wrong. I might punch in just to make sure that it's getting what I'm singing. I tell this to my students too. When my students have questions about how to improvise, I say, well, okay, pretend we're going to jam, we're going to put on a loop, and we're going to play over C minor 7. Okay, pretend I wrote this song and I have no melody. I want you to write a melody. Your first 16 bars of your solo, I want to be memorable and simple that I can remember. Mm-hmm. So, it stops them from just going, and playing as fast as they go. Yeah. Something like that is going to be much more, and they can sing that, and that's the way I approach my stuff. I mean, Look, I'm 56 years old, so my earliest influences were Beatles and highly melodic rock stuff. You know, the early Eric Clapton stuff, the early Led Zeppelin stuff, the early Allman Brothers stuff. It was like really based on really strong melodies. When I think about my favorite people, it's Stevie Wonder.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that I really listen to. James Taylor, that's the music I listen to now probably more than any kind of progressive jazz. I mean, there's always an interest to see what people can do and how amazing their technique can be, but that doesn't really impress me as much the older I am. It's more about lyric, the overall building a song. My next CD, I'm hopefully working on more of a lyrical content, maybe me singing or at least having friends sing more, because I'm much more impressed and get much more enjoyment out of listening to a real song with all of its elements. You know, mood that strikes you, melodies, grooves, and lyrics. That's a real art form. Put all that together and make it into one thing, into one package.
Yeah. Some recordings remind me of Pat Metheny kind of.
My recordings?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure.
With
I'm very.
vocals and,
well, exactly, and it's also I have a Brazilian friend who we've always worked together very well. His name is Rogério Jardim, and he, you know, I sent him those tracks, and I said I kind of want basically this. 30 minutes later, I get the tracks in the mail, and they're perfect. Yeah, he's an amazing musician. Yes, and the reason I add vocals because I've always liked. I think when you add the extra vocals, you bring a bigger demographic. All of a sudden, there's more people can relate to it.
yeah.
You know, it's just like playing shredding fast, difficult scales. You're going to get a lot of guitar enthusiasts, and that's all great. But I like the fact that on my gigs, when I play at the Baked Potato or whenever I play at festivals like in the United States, it's a big combination. I mean, it's a big. I look on the audience. There's girls and there's young kids and there's old people. There's like a nice variety of, and it didn't. I think when I used to play more fusion, you don't get all those people involved,
No.
and it's just as rewarding and just as fulfilling to appeal to, you know, my next door neighbor who knows nothing about music, and to appeal to somebody who knows everything about guitars, you know. So.
Yeah. And usually with the fusion concerts, there's a lonely man sitting at tables.
Of course. I know, I've been there. In the audience and on stage.
There's just one of the recordings, some of this. That's one of the recordings where it's just guitar, bass, keyboards and drums.
Right.
Most songs are very layered.
Well, that's from my first CD.
Yeah.
That's from my first CD, and that CD was probably a culmination of a few years of just coming up with ideas. So that's rather piecemeal together. There's like a lot of different stuff on that record. I think for that reason. I think it's often true with a lot of people's, many artists' first CD is that they kind of compile stuff over years, and then of course the second CD they need to get up by the next year.
Yeah.
So they have to kind of cram all that in. But yeah, and that was kind of before. That was kind of right when I began recording. So that's before I really got into the the layered stuff too. And the stuff I write for television is kind of swampy layered stuff as well. So that, you know, I kind of in the last 5 years gone back to my roots and playing more slide guitar, and so that's kind of it's opened up new doors on what I can do with the slide guitar. So I think at that point, I think it's just what the song called for. I don't know. I kind of had this idea for a Robin Ford, Larry Carlton type of groove, and you know, with a stop, and that's kind of all I needed. That song is not as ambient as the other ones.
No.
You're right. Yeah.
Because I noticed on every CD there are certain songs that are somewhat different from the rest.
Well, that's true.
Worn but Not Tethered with Randy Crawford is a great song. My wife responds immediately to it. So
I like that one.
Yeah, and
that actually was released on her latest greatest hits on Warner Brothers Europe, and they were going to call the CD "Worn but Not Tattered," but they didn't do it. At the last minute, they decided just to call it "The Best of Randy Crawford." Yeah, but it's on there. Yeah,
quite an honor.
Yeah, it is an honor. Well, I worked with her for 13 years. She's a special artist. She's a very moody singer, as a lot of artists are. She's a true artist. You know, she's one of the. There's only a handful of singers I know on the planet that can take a song that they did 20 or 30 years before, sing it completely different, but still not lose the original intent of it. You know, a lot of people have a lot of fancy licks, and they take things and they change it to a reggae beat, or they change the groove. She's just she's a magical person. I'm telling you, Randy Crawford is very special. And if you ever get to know her, she can be, very eccentric. She can be. Many people take her wrong because she's sometimes very cryptic in the way she talks to you. She'll say something. You go, what does she mean by that? You can't really read her. But I know her very well, so I understand her moods. And when she's in a good mood, in a very communicative mood, it's almost like she reads your mind. She can tell what you're going to say before you're going to say it. And she's the sweetest thing. But that makes for her, I think, why she's such a great singer. I mean, you can tell when she sings, it's coming from something special,
Okay.
And she does it effortlessly. Anyway, she's besides being a good friend, I worked with her for 13 years. She lives maybe 5 houses from me in Los Angeles.
Okay.
Up in the Laurel Canyon.
So when you're out of sugar.
Yeah, exactly. Can you turn it down? But she comes over every now and then, and that one afternoon I had an idea for her. I said, hey, man, let's just record a blues. Because we used to do this on her live show every now and then. When she was feeling in a good mood, she would just start singing. And believe me, she has 100 different verses to a blues song like that. She can go on for a half an hour and never repeat herself for the words. So she just came up with the words right there in my living room. We had a microphone, we just turned it on, she had headphones on, she just sat there and smiled, and then we went and got lunch. And I came back later on that day and pasted it together and hired Will Kennedy, played drums on that, and I think Larry Campbell played bass, and Renato Neto on keyboards from Prince's band, he's a good friend of mine. Yeah, they came out quite good.
Incredible.
Yeah, she's special.
On that same CD, Beyond It All, you had March 28. That's a very special song with a dual guitar.
Little dual back and forth. That's my brother had just passed away. My little brother had died of cancer, and that was his birthday. And I thought about it when I titled that. I was going, I'm really sad. Should I title it after the day he died or the day he was born? So I chose the day he was born. I thought it might be a little more optimistic. But March 28th was his birthday, so I just called that, and that was just the way I was feeling at that time.
And the dual guitars is you and your brother, or
no? I had that was all me. Of course, he didn't play guitar.
No.
But it wasn't supposed to mean that. I didn't think about it that way at all. I was just kind of one thing. I just kind of set down an acoustic guitar and kind of played the chords, and I went, oh, that's kind of a nice idea. And then I just started adding guitars, and most of those guitar parts were like first take. I just kind of like played one, and I double tracked the next one, and kind of played off myself really. But it came out quite nice. It's a nice little moody piece. Yeah.
And the last piece on that CD is Closure. And that's with the swell.
Been a long time. That one actually I had for many years. That was just a solo piece that I had with drop D tuning. But I just had a nice vibe to it. I don't know. I had it kind of sitting around the house for a long time, and I figured actually a lot of my CDs I would close the CD with some kind of more personal solo guitar piece like that. And I did that live for a while in concert. It takes a lot of effects.
Yeah,
a lot of really hard. They kind of sound like an organ sometimes. Yeah. Sounds like it's not guitar, which was the idea. I was trying to make it sound more, like choir-esque, like a big.
So of course, delay, drop D.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they came out quite nice.
Yeah.
Well, I think the effects I used on that were just a lot of delay for the most part, and I think I had some. I'm trying to remember which chorus unit. I think I used TC Electronics Spatial Expander.
Okay.
I don't know why I remember this, but I do remember the actual unit that I used. But and then I had a guy named David Hughes play bass on it. He played arco bass, and that adds for nice. It gives it a nice, give it more of an orchestral sound.
Okay,
of course.
Yeah, sometimes you use acoustic bass on certain tracks. Is that
just for the softer songs? That just adds another dimension. I think it's just if I hear like there's a song called "She Always Knew," or I'm sorry, "A Close Distance," which was on the last CD. It's just usually the softer, more sensitive pieces. I like upright bass. And I have some great friends who play great upright bass. Yeah. That's one great thing about living in Los Angeles. I have like the world's greatest players, like who live down the street.
Yeah. Oh man, sometimes when I see the concerts in Baked Potato, oh man.
You go, man, if I was living there, I could see
every night.
Whoever, every night Baked Potato has great players.
Amazing. The other CD, Falling Up.
Yes.
You did come together.
I did.
You going to play it?
We're going to play it today. Yeah, of course. Talik Olested is a harmonica it's actually, his name is Norwegian, I think, of ancestry. And he's been a good friend of mine since 1989. We played together on a tour in Japan with Bobby Caldwell, this great singer from Los Angeles. And yeah, we used to come together as one of those songs we used to play live with Metallica and myself. And he had hired me to play that on his record originally.
Mm-hmm.
And then I heard, I said, that's really great. You know, I should put that on my CD. It's funny because some of my jazz, snobbier jazz friends said, why'd you put a Beatles song on your record? That's totally out of context. And right when my friend was saying that to me, somebody walked in the door and says, man, I heard your new CD. I love Come Together. You know, I said, that's why I put it on there, because so many people kind of like that.
Yeah, you can relate to it.
Of course. And I think, you know, I mastered it a little differently than Tolik's version. My version, I had different guys in Los Angeles. The mix was pretty much the same, I think. The guitar might be a little hotter and than his version. And I think the overall mix, I mean, I have, you know, I have a certain process. After I finish the recording, I always go through like a better preamps and outboard gear and a bigger board to make it, to warm it up and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So that was probably the only difference from his, but the performances are the same. That's on his CD as well.
And Elska was, you know.
Elska, that's right. She's wonderful. Yeah.
I saw it on the CD, and she's here tonight.
She's here tonight.
Yeah, this afternoon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. It's an afternoon show.
Yeah. The last CD is Monkeys and Slide.
Yes.
And Traces. That's a very slow slide song.
Yes.
With a lot of layered melody.
Mm.
Can you talk about that?
You know, it's like, it's once again like I get these little ideas. I'll sit around with a drum machine or friends, and I'll just kind of. It's got a Jimi Hendrix type of sound. Those kind of things. I like the open. You know, that's one great thing about guitar is you can get all that sound with the open strings, which is kind of goes back to it's more country or Appalachian roots. You know, of having those kind of. Have those kind of ringing. Sound like
that's great sound.
I just love it. You know, no other instrument can sound like that. So I always gravitate towards that, and that was just an idea. You know.
Okay, but
once again, about the.
To me, it sounded a bit Indonesian, or.
Well, I've had that kind of said that also, but I was nothing like that was in my mind. I was more just thinking of more like a Jimi Hendrix floaty, like a old hippie type of, you know, the kind of, there were some old rock tunes.
Oh yeah. I thought maybe you heard Scott Henderson's Jakarta.
No.
And this sounded a bit similar, but I thought, so this is his take on a tune in that fashion. Really?
No, I mean, I was not thinking that at all. I was just, I think more than anything else, I think I remember it being like one of the rare rainy days in Los Angeles. Because it doesn't rain, as I said. But I remember when it does, it comes down like monsoon. It'll rain for 2 days straight. Yeah. It just comes down in sheets. And I remember sitting in my house, it was just kind of one of those rainy day feels, you know. I was just sitting kind of really melancholy, and it just felt good just to. Once again, it's a great guitar chord. With all the open strings. Yeah, the low something like that. So that just became me with an acoustic guitar, you know, started off. And then I just followed the chords with the melody. So it's very much, I think I was kind of going for the mood of like an old Jimi Hendrix, you know, kind of druggy, kind of a hippie, smoking pot in the den, you know, type of.
Well, there's some Indian influence.
Well, there could be. And when you hear slide, sometimes it sounds like that too. Especially when like hit play on slide with harmonics and stuff like that, it can kind of sound like some kind of old raga, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And on that same CD, there was the Red Scat.
Oh yeah.
It was a retake or a live take? It was a live take.
That's right, the live one on the last. Well, the idea was the last CD was going to be more of a live, almost a whole live, because I had so many requests from people to do live shows. Our band, I mean, I'm proud of my recordings, but the band, we have a certain chemistry live, and we go places that a lot of fusion bands don't go, I think, because my music is not harmonically as dense as Scott Henderson's or Alan Holdsworth's harmonically, but the musicians are so good quality, and we make stuff happen with like one chord that I don't see happen in many bands because they're all like Jeff Babco played on that record on that live thing, and he and I have a rapport. We just work together really well, and we've had so many great nights at the Baked Potato that I wanted to kind of capture that some. So that was the idea behind it. Unfortunately, we recorded 2 nights. One was at a friend of mine's house, and that turned out to be kind of a nightmare because they had the room was not as like we thought it would sound. It was really high ceilings and it sounded really boomy, and the performance was just unfortunately not really good. And then the other night at the Baked Potato, somebody spilled a drink into the monitor board, so like almost everything was ruined except for that song. And so it was kind of money wasted because I had all these guys set up with microphones and engineers and stuff, but that just happened. So the recording had to crackle and pop through everything, So, but that we salvaged that one, and that's just kind of an example. And actually, we were probably drinking a few drinks, which is, I mean, I hate to say I'm an advocate for that, but sometimes you just want a little, you loosen up after like 1 or 2 drinks, and that was just a good example of how we can take Jeff and we all kind of play off each other because we all listen and we make special things happen with the same old songs. I'm not one for like, I don't care if they don't reproduce my songs exactly like the record. I like the freedom of letting guys run amok and come up with ideas.
Yeah, I really like the sound, the freedom of it. So
Yeah,
I hope you'll do a live recording.
I have a lot of requests for that, so maybe that's in the making. Because but I think I'm gonna write one more CD and then do a live one. I think I have a bunch of new ideas that I'm working on for the new CD. So that's gonna be the next priority. Hopefully by the end of the year, we're hoping.
Okay. That's it.
Is that good?
Yeah, it was great.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was really fun. I hope there's enough information there for you to get something good. I hope.
I have one question.
Yes.
Could I just feel your guitar, your setup?
Yeah, of course. This is this is a 54. This is an old guitar.
Yeah, just
But
the
it's
feel
very low.
of your setup and.
Sure. Nice action. Huh?
This is great.
I do them all myself. I mean, I make this nut myself, and I set up the bridge and everything. The action, I like it very low. I have the files and everything. I do it all myself.
Okay. This is
It's nice
incredible.
guitar. Well, this neck is very special. These are rare because it's 54, of course. And that's the old wood just sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
But all my guitars kind of play like that.
It's very responsive.
Very responsive.
Yeah.
The old Brazilian rosewood is special.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Yeah,
For letting me hold.
Yeah, no, this is a great one. This is my favorite one.
Yeah.
Let me get a picture of that. Did you get it recorded? I was gonna say.